Throughout the New Testament, we are regularly confronted with the question of what levels of freedoms do individuals have to choose the good or to choose God. In our passage today, verse 22 hints at this discussion. In that verse, Jesus says, quote, "All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows who the Son is except the Father, or who the Father is except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him," end quote. Now that verse indirectly speaks into the doctrine of election and the doctrine of predestination. Now we're going to save those direct conversations for another day, but today we're going to consider what has historically been called the fourfold state of man. It describes man's essential freedom in each of these four major states of human history. I'll summarize them first and then briefly describe each of these four states. In Augustine's classic work, The City of God, he summarizes the four states in this way. First, the state of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden before the fall is that it was possible for them to sin. Second, the state of humanity after the fall is that it was impossible for them not to sin. Third, the state of humanity after one accepts Jesus is that it is possible not to sin. Finally, the state of man, as it will be in eternal glory, is that it is not possible to sin. All right, let's begin with the first one. In the Garden of Eden, mankind was in a state of innocence, in which it was possible for them not to sin. Adam and Eve had what theologians call original righteousness. There was no corruption in their heart, not the least inclination to evil. It was a holy state of existence and a happy state of existence. Every thought was for God and only for God. Every action was fully endowed with its proper purpose. Adam's was a life of tranquility, of delight, of immortality, and of sheer pleasure as he lived in Eden. And yet, in his nature, God made man mutable, able to choose evil, which, of course, when tempted, he did. Second, after the fall, mankind entered the state of nature, which describes every human being before accepting Jesus' free gift of salvation. In this state, a person is unable not to sin. Sin has disordered and corrupted the entirety of man. The heart is not simply partially disordered, with a small bit of goodness still remaining for them to choose the good if they tried. In this state, men are hostile enemies of God. The New Testament says that we are in this state called children of wrath, Ephesians 2:3. Our understanding, our will, our affections, our conscience, our memory, and our body are all corrupted. Oh, how we need Christ to free us from that slavery. Third is the state of grace, which describes man's state after being born again, where it is now possible not to sin. This state, a person has been regenerated, renewed, illuminated for Christ. All six areas described before, their understanding, their will, their affections, their conscience, their memory, and their body, are now capable of serving Christ, and increasingly so. As our text demonstrates, only a person who God chooses to release from the state of nature could possibly experience this state of grace. In this blessed state, we experience a true union with Christ, and are blessed with the grace of sanctification, where we mortify the deeds of the body and grow in our likeness of Christ. Though we're capable in this state of living for God, the flesh still wages war on our hearts, and we're also capable of sinning. We're not yet perfected. The fourth and final state is the eternal state in which we will be unable to sin. The born again will be given glorified bodies in which no more sin or corruption of the mind or heart will ever permeate our existence again. Thomas Boston writes that we will, quote, leave all the seeds of corruption behind. We'll leave them all in the grave and rise incorruptible, incapable of the least indisposition, sickness or sore, and much more of dying, end quote. We will see his throne and will be granted what Thomas Boston calls glorious bodies, not only beautifully and well proportioned, but full of splendor and brightness. Come, Lord Jesus.